Renaissance Unity, all is well? And all is in divine order. Let's affirm that again. All is well? And all is in divine order. Now, this is an add-on, kind of like a part 2 of a sequel. And last week, we started talking about this notion of forgiveness. And I wasn't sure, Reverend Brett, if I was going to go into part 2, the sequel. You know, Batman, Superman, this is always a sequel to something good. And I didn't realize the message had such a profound impact. That's my assessment. Last week until I started checking my text messages, my emails, and my missed phone calls. And then I had 2 lunch outings with Renaissance Unity people. And all had to do with Reverend Glenn. Your message was powerful. I said, thank you very much. But, can we all say but? But, I have a bone to pick with you. 2 bones to pick with you, my attorney, Steve. Forgiving is hard. It's a hard thing to do. And so when you say we should just forgive and forget and sometimes run, it's hard. Does anybody agree with that didn't text me or email me or take me to lunch? I'm still available for lunch. Yes, sir. Free of change. You know it. But last week I shared a sculpture from Celeste Roberg. And it was called Rising Karen. You remember that? Those of you who were here, who are watching online. And I talked about this being symbolic in nature, and that the stones are experiences that we've had. And they lodge in us because they're experiences that we won't release, we won't let go, we won't forgive, we won't forget. And so those experiences, they weigh us down, they bog us down. They prevent us from moving. And a lot of you must have related to that. Does anybody have stones inside of them that you know there's a stone in me that you're working on? Rising Karen is trying to get up, but the past keeps pushing her down. And so we say, as a family here, can we just be open and honest with each other? I want you to stand up and look me in the eye. Look me in the eye. And just open up like this. This is the way we open. I'm a therapist by training. I think most of you know that. And so I'm always looking at people who sit across me and they're like this, or they have their feet crossed. And what are they doing? I hear you, but I ain't listening. I want to move forward, but not really. I'll pay your fee and I'll keep coming back, but I won't change. I hear you saying forgive and forget, but I won't forgive, I won't forget. So I want you to tell yourself, it's time to heal. It's time to heal. And there's something we say in New Thought circles, there's nothing to heal, only God to reveal. Let's say that together. There's nothing to heal, only God to reveal. You may be seated. I want to clarify something. I want to go back to that statement I said about run. As I emphasize, sometimes there's a need to run. And people say sometimes you need to face things, and sometimes you do face things. I'm a true believer in that. But sometimes if you're in harm's way, if someone is abusing you, misusing you, that becomes criminal in nature. Psychological and physical is in danger. Get out of that scenario. Can I get an amen? Don't leave yourself in harm's way. We see it too often. Remember, I'm a therapist. So for years in my practice, I saw people come in battered and bruised. Don't let yourself be in harm's way. In that case, you do run, you flee, because that person is not ready to be healthy, to be whole. Now let's get back to forgiving and forgetting. Can we get back to forgiving? Can we? This really requires a workshop, because what I'm trying to fit in over 2 Sundays, 20-minute sessions, is really 6 months of therapy. There it is. And so it is. But someone asked about authenticity. Can we say that? Authenticity and forgiveness. And they asked the questions, how can I be authentic in my forgiveness when I'm still hurting, I'm still mad, I'm still angry at what happened and the person that made it happen? How can I be authentic when I'm feeling those emotions, those strong emotions, those human emotions? How can I do that? And it still seems so fresh, even though it was a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. The wound still seems fresh. And so I think what they were asking me is authenticity keeping it real? Is authenticity permission to tell it like it is or to tell someone off? Is authenticity to live the way I feel? Is authenticity my permission to get revenge? Is authenticity my permit to hold back, to not give? Very good questions. Very good questions. And we all experience those questions. We want to ask those questions. And maybe they were thinking, Reverend Glenn, maybe you don't understand that there's a time for grieving. There's a time for crying. There's a time for weeping. Maybe you just don't understand that. But I do. But I also believe that in that time of crying, in that time of weeping, there's also a time to open the door to healing. And I also believe that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. It may not be this morning, but you have to open the door to that joy some morning. You pick a morning, and you have that power to pick a morning. And so I ask you the question, do you want to be healed? Do you want to be healed? Do you want to be healed? This is the most powerful conversation we could ever have, because forgiveness is what holds us back. It's not energy, because energy is tied to forgiveness. Rising Karen is filled with stones. Those stones block her energy paths, the chakras. And all of those energy points are blocked. And so she can't move forward in full force. This morning, I need your permission to do something. Can I have your permission to take you out of the world and into the spiritual realm? Can I have your permission this morning? Just for a couple of minutes, and then you can go back to playing in the world. All right? Get back in that sandbox as you see fit. But Jesus said, I am in the world, but not of the world. And so I ask you the question, do you realize that you live in two worlds? There's the spiritual nature of you, and there's the human nature of you. And when we talk about this topic of forgiveness, you're mostly driven by the human part of you. The human part of you that wants to act human, that wants to act like the norm of our society. Most people say, you do something to me, it's an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And that's what we think, isn't it? I got to get them back. They owe me. But understand, your authentic self is not a separation from God. Your authentic self is a consistent closeness, oneness, unification with God, the mastermind. Reverend Gary Simmons, a unity minister, in the book, Eye of the Storm, he said something that I thought was just fantastic. Hit me in the face, Reverend Wildman. He said, you are either the way of God or you're in the way of God. Is that up there? Y'all need to take a picture of that. Take a picture of that because that's your daily assessment. When you don't want to forgive, when you don't want to move forward, ask yourself, are you either the way of God or are you in the way of God? And why do we say that? Because you're on a mission here. You have a purpose here. And that mission, that purpose is tied to you. It's supposed to be love. You're supposed to be light. You're supposed to be living with a oneness with God, the mastermind. And so we ask you, do you understand that forgiveness is the way of God? Forgiveness is the medicine for all the things that ail you, that anger you, that saddens you, that make you remorseful. All those wounds that are still open. Forgiveness is the answer. Forgiveness restores us back to our spiritual nature. Now, Rising Karen had good intentions to forgive. Rising Karen is a good person, just like you, with all the things she wants to release and let go because she's part of the unity movement, part of Renaissance unity. But she just can't release those stones. And so she moves out into life every day. She gets up. She starts the journey of life. And on the outside, all is well and in divine order. How you feeling? Blessed and highly favored. It's the common response. But then there's a moment where Karen sits and she has this sense of emptiness. And it reminds me of a sculpture of Albert Giordani. And that sculpture, emptiness. Emptiness. If Donnie could get it up there, it would be profound. Emptiness. I think it's the twin to Rising Karen. And then maybe we can rise up with all those stones in us. And we travel a little distance. And then all of a sudden, the emotions come back. And we feel this sense of emptiness. And so we sit and we remember. We sit. We feel empty. We sat and we feel alone. We sit and we feel remorseful. We sit and feel guilty. We sit and we feel like time is running out. We sit and empty. Anybody ever been on empty? Sitting, feeling empty? I stumbled across this poem by Braden Oakman some time ago. And I think what she was conveying in this poem captures the essence of how we move from Rising Karen to the sense of emptiness. And we can't seem to move on in the spirit of love, of light, of energy. And it just says, I lied and said I was busy. I was busy, but not in a way most people understand. I was busy taking deep breaths. I was busy silencing irrational thoughts. I was busy calming a racing heart. I was busy telling myself, I'm okay. Sometimes this is my busy. I will not apologize for it. We all should be able to relate to Britain Because we all have those moments where we need to engage in self-care. It has to be about us. And that self-care sees us taking deep breaths, silencing the noise, as Brett talked about, around us and in us and through us, and finding that inner peace that is inside of us. See, your authentic self wants to forgive. Your authentic self wants to forget. Your authentic self wants to be healed back to spiritual nature. To me, the greatest moment and the greatest testimony of forgiveness that opened the door for all of us along our spiritual journey. It was a moment that we see of love, of light, and of oneness with God. There was this man stretched out on the cross. He had been beaten. He was bloody. He was thirsty. And all he could muster out of the words was, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." That's the ultimate illustration of forgiveness. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Can we ever get to that point? Because see, from a metaphysical perspective, it's affirming that Jesus understood that our roots are spiritual in nature and that we are divine love. Sometimes we're distorted in our views, in our words, in our actions, but at the core, all of us are from the same source, and we're filled with divine love that we're here to rediscover. And so I want you to always remember that if there is a principle and someone has demonstrated that principle, then it can be duplicated. You understand that? Understand that. That means that if there's a principle, if there's a law of behavior, and someone has worked that law, that principle, and they demonstrate it, that means you can do it too. Can we say, I can do it too? Jesus demonstrated the greatest level of forgiveness ever. Why can't you? With that thing that you won't let go. Why can't you? Repeat after me. In my life, there's nothing to be healed, only God to be revealed. And God lives in me. God is willing to work for me, for my good, for my elevation, and for my glorification. Remember that. When you hurt, there's always this tendency to sit and feel empty. This sense that I need to get revenge. I need to show them. But when you do that, you hold on to those stones. And then that dragon inside of you becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And you feed that dragon with those negative emotions, those negative energies. And then the dragon gets so big that you get lost behind the dragon. And lost is your identity in Christ. Does anybody want to be hidden by a dragon? None of us do. The path of forgiveness is not easy. And there has to be more than 2 Sunday messages. And I know that. And maybe we'll come together, Reverend Wilma and Reverend Brett, and we'll do a workshop, a full course on forgiveness, the walk, the look, the spirit of forgiveness. But there's too many times where we simply stand in judgment. I want to be God. I want to be the judge. I want to be the jury. Because I want to be able to say, I wouldn't have never done that. Why did you do that to me? Why would a good God, a great God, let something like that happen to me? Yes, we even stand in judgment of God. But the practice that we gave ourselves to in unity was the practice of empathy. And with that empathy, we realize that everyone is different. There's a uniqueness about each and every one of us. And that uniqueness sees us arriving at different places at different times of our life. The trains don't always run on time together. So instead of standing in judgment, why not stand in forgiveness and simply say, I forgive you? Can we all just practice that right now and just say, I forgive you? And sometimes that you is really the me. It's me. It's me, oh Lord, standing in need of prayer, standing in the need of forgiveness. Remember that statue, Grace and Karen? Remember those stones. If you understand the nature of the oyster produces pearls. But the pearls can only be produced by what's called an irritant. An irritant. Something that has to be released and let go. I want you to look at those stones inside of you today and just call them out as irritants. I don't want you to cast them aside. That's too easy because I'll get calls and letters from people who will tell me, you can't just run away. You got to process it. I understand that, Reverend Adam. I'm a minister. I'm a counselor. That's what I do. I get paid a couple $100 an hour. Let you process for 44 weeks if you want. But at the end of those 44 weeks, what I'm going to tell you is lean in with me. Hold out your hands. I'm going to tell you that those stones that are inside of you are supposed to be cracked open. Because there's a pearl, it's a pearl of wisdom in each one of those stones. And those pearls of wisdom are supposed to carry you for the rest of your life. They're supposed to help you see the good in all things and all people. So if you can start opening up those stones and taking out the pearls, I think we can discard the outer coating that's weighing you down so much. So in conclusion, I want to just talk about one little project that hit me that I participated in a couple years ago. And it was a project by Candy Chang. One of her close friends died. And she was down, she was out in New Orleans. But one day she got up and decided, I'm going to paint the side of his house. And she painted it, and she put something on there. She wrote on there in chalk, before I die, I want to. And she left it blank. And so I challenge you today as Brett did. But from a different angle, we're not talking about your mortality, we're talking about living. It's nothing to do with you dying. But it does put into perspective that there will become a time when the usefulness of your body will diminish. It will be discarded. And the spirit will live on. But in this moment that we have remaining, can you forgive? Can you forget? Release and let go of those stones. And so can you just put it in a bigger frame, the bigger context? Before I die, I want to. And so this morning, if I could just have you to write down on your prayer request form what it is that you'll commit to today. Before I die, I want to have everyone that comes into my space realize that they're loved and they have high value. If I can do that, Renaissance Unity, I'll know that my living was not in vain. Can we say an affirmation together? There's nothing to heal, only God to reveal. I think it was Motel 6 that said, we'll keep the light on. And we'll hold the high watch for you to elevate into what you're supposed to be. Love, light, and oneness with the mighty Creator, God, the Mastermind. Thanks for having me this morning, Renaissance Unity. I love you. And there's nothing you can do about it but receive my love. Thank you.